Hi, everybody. This is Rob Galvin. Thanks for joining today for this week's weekly Rhomobile Suite webinar. Today we have Adam Blum here, product manager for Rhomobile Suite. He's going to cover what's in this latest release. As always, if you can just queue up the questions via GoToMeeting, we'll get to those at the end of the presentation. And if you need to, for some reason, leave the presentation in the middle, we'll have those questions and answers captured in the replay, and they'll be posted on Launchpad as usual. Then, of course, if you can just leave me feedback on what you'd like to see coming up in the next couple of webinars, that would be great. At the end of the webinar, there's a short question you can fill out. Just give me some comments on how you thought that today's webinar was, as well as what you'd like to see. That would be much appreciated. Next week, we will be talking about Row Connect Push in particular and walking through demonstrating how to use that feature. We've had that feature, I guess, since 2.1, so we'll be covering that in great detail. And if you've missed the past few webinars, we've done quite a few recently, a variety of different topics. You can see them here. They are always on developer.motorolasolutions.com, and today's webinar will be posted probably by tomorrow as well. So check the recent webinars that we've done. Last week I did a session on data handling, large data handling, how to load a large data set when your application initializes, as well as some techniques for displaying large data sets in different view types, list types, and there's a sample application that was included and posted after the webinar. So check that out. The Rhomobile apps for iOS we did the week before. That's been getting a lot of replays. Walks you through the complete process of getting the developer certificates in the Apple Developer Program Provisioning Portal, and walking through the scenario of getting it onto your device and into Row Studio, etc. So check that out, as well as the other ones as well. We did a bunch on performance. Okay, so check out the webinars. The replays are up there on developer.motorolasolutions.com. All right, so now let's get to today's topic. I'm going to change the presenter here, so just bear with me for a moment. Adam, welcome.
Great, thank you, Rob. So thanks a lot. So I'm very pleased to be here today to talk about Row Elements 2.2. Row Elements 2.2 is now up there as the full release on Motorola Launchpad. I hope many of you have already downloaded it, but if not, please do so, and please sign up for Motorola Launchpad if you haven't done it already. We actually managed to get the release candidate posted as of November 29th, which was actually the time frame that we said we would. So big congratulations, and the release candidate is actually identical to the final release. So big congratulations to the team that managed to get a full release out in 3 months. It's really nice to see the continued agile delivery within a large company like Motorola. So we're very excited about it. The themes of the release, we want to continue to lead in our overall theme is the only clean sheet of paper for enterprise mobility. And what that really means is taking the best of modern development practices, model view controller, ORM, scaffolding, cloud, applied to mobile apps. And generally, most enterprise mobility platforms are using much older techniques. But a big thing for this release is to take this unique approach, right, all the advantages of the Row Elements approach, but take that actually to other languages. So we want to make JavaScript a true peer to Ruby. So you'll see that we've actually taken a lot of the you may know that we have a lot of JavaScript APIs that were targeted to Motorola devices that were introduced in Row Elements version 1. A lot of the traditional APIs for consumer devices, what was exposed as roads, were previously only available as Ruby, and many to most of those are now available as JavaScript, and we'll talk about what some of those are. We want to continue to lead in device and OS diversity. We have the beginnings of an implementation of Windows Phone 8. Full Windows Phone 8 will be in the next release, but beginning to support MPA 3.0 devices. And of course, MPA 3.0 is a new device family from Motorola that emphasizes new sensors. So we have a whole new raw sensors API that I'll be talking about and demonstrating. And in general, this ties into our overall theme of tracking the exploding array of device capabilities from Motorola and other device manufacturers. So we support some of these raw sensors like accelerometer and magnetometer on other devices such as iOS and Android. So that's a very exciting development, and I'll be showing an example of that. So here we are in December 2012 with Row Elements 2.2, Row Connect 3.4 actually managed to ship a little bit earlier than that December, which you may have seen this roadmap before. And then at the end, I'll talk a little bit about what the themes are of Row Elements 4.0 and Row Connect 4.0 that we plan to release next year. The numbering, by the way, around 4.0, as we'll talk about later, is really just to line up the numbers so we don't have, and we can't do a Row Connect 3.0 because or Row Elements 3.0 and Row Connect 3.0 because we've already done that in the past. Big features for this release: video and audio capture across all the OSs. This is something we've always wanted to do. It's a big nut for us. We support a lot more operating systems than any of the frameworks, specifically Windows Mobile and Windows CE, Windows Desktop. So doing new features, we've got lots more columns, if you will, to preview the metaphor that Rob has in his compatibility matrix than most platforms have to do. We support playback of audio and video. We support multiple simultaneous apps. This, of course, applies when you do the shared container model, which we won't be talking about today. It's an exciting capability to have multiple apps share the same infrastructure, also not available from other competitive frameworks. So we now support multiple apps within that, which is, of course, the motivation for it. But of course, the key thing is JavaScript, JavaScript, JavaScript. Take all these advantages, not just Ruby. We still love Ruby, but we also know there are cases where using it in JavaScript in the view has a lot of advantages, and just where you have a shop where you've just got a lot of JavaScript developers and maybe they don't want to learn Ruby right away. So we have JavaScript device capabilities on iOS and consumer Android. And then what we did there specifically is took JavaScript equivalents of the existing Roads APIs. And you'll see what we actually do in the API now is actually front load the discussion of the sort of JavaScript syntax of it, because it is new to most Roads and Row Elements developers. We also have raw sensors. I'll be showing off Magnetometer. This is fairly new, but we support accelerometer and magnetometer across different devices. We also have support for other kinds of sensors that are going to be appearing on a lot of Motorola MPA 3.0 devices, but we will, of course, support, as other devices come out with these other capabilities, temperature, heat, light, pressure, we will be supporting those as well. So video capture. This is available for, just a caveat on this, it is available now, but we will make it available for everything on Windows Mobile Motorola devices, Android Motorola devices, which includes ET1, but we have a number of other devices coming. I'm not going to talk about the other devices right here, but I think many of you on the call are probably using some of those other devices as well. While those other devices are not formally supported, these calls work there as well. And then, of course, this does work on consumer Android devices. I'll actually be demoing to you from a consumer Android device my Nexus using Android Projector to show it to you from the device. We can't do that. When you do device capability demos, it's pretty important to do it from a physical device because the Android emulator and our row simulator are not going to really capture all of these advanced device capabilities. So one of the other things I'm really excited about is the new API compatibility matrix. This is at docs.rhomobile.com, and I will just link to this right now. And So this is the screen right here. Apologize for the background noise there. The screen right here is the new organization of this, and this became particularly critical because we were just getting so many device capabilities that we needed to have a way to communicate this better. So what you'll see is we've listed all of the things that apply to all devices up above here. This is Rob's handiwork. He did a fantastic job. And then below here we have the devices that apply, that today are more applicable just to Motorola devices. So let's focus on this, this top part of the matrix first, and notice that we have, for many of the Rhodes APIs, accelerometer, async HTTP, audio capture, camera, database, e-compass, file, geolocation, magnetometer, map view. We have a Rhodes and a JavaScript implementation of these things. So an example of this, and of course the JavaScript thing is sort of new. So if you're familiar with camera, we had a camera API, and you can see that you can go right into how to use the JavaScript equivalent. So this is quite new. It's something that I'm pretty excited about, and definitely for those of you that maybe have used a JavaScript only framework in the past, but like the advantages of the row elements and Rhodes support of MVC, ORM, sync, the full IDE, you may want to consider at this point moving from a framework such as PhoneGap. This is a great product, but is not trying to do these additional capabilities. Now that we have the JavaScript support, you can do that. Notice, by the way, that it does require the row JavaScript extension, and you must have a row elements license to use the JavaScript APIs. And this is consistent. I have a slide at the end, this backup, that talks about the differences between Rhodes and row elements, and we've always said that when we do the full JavaScript support, it would be something that would be something that would require a row elements license. But the good news, as you'll see today, is you can actually get started, and you'll just get a little nag screen if you do not have the row elements license at the time. So great job by Rob on the matrix. It actually makes it easy to talk about some of these new features. Now, one of the new features that I'm most excited about is video capture. And so the video capture event, it supports 3 main events: start, stop, and cancel. And so an example of how you call it is you call video capture start. You don't have to do stop. You can provide a timeline, duration. By default, that duration is 5 seconds, and then it'll just stop on its own. It can also it can stop based upon user invocation of stop, and I'll demonstrate that shortly. But you can also pop up your own form on the screen, or whatever other way that you want to have, provide a user input to what the stop would be. So the parameters of video capture are the duration in milliseconds. The default is 5,000. I think generally you may want to use set it to a higher value. The destination is a file name or URL. It's a URL or file name. In the URL scenario, it supports HTTP or FTP, and there is no default. You do need to give it some kind of file name. It takes a username and a string for your FTP backend. The default is none, which may work just fine. You may allow anonymous FTP and just let people in, or let the device in. And then you have a name which must be a file name compliant with the OS restrictions, which of course are just Windows Mobile and Android. I would recommend, you're trying to, we want to do write once, run everywhere, so do give it something that complies with the Windows Mobile restrictions on file names, which is more restrictive than Android. So here's an example of how you would do this. The video capture start sample, this is a little different than the video capture start sample for the following reasons. One is when you invoke this, you're going to hook in this, whatever your code is to do the video, into some kind of click event. Notice this is how I'm doing it. This method of doing it, in the end, you can use whatever JavaScript you want that works. But we have our scaffolding based on jQuery Mobile, which overrides input buttons, type equals submit buttons. So if you just plop the video capture, this is information you're just getting here on the webinar. If you just plop the video capture sample that we ship with into your scaffolded app, it's not going to click. So I will be posting, I have a sample that puts this all together, and I will be posting this all up on github.com/Rhomobile afterwards. So take a look at that particular detail of how to make sure that your events are clickable in our scaffolding. So notice what I'm here. I'm just setting the duration as 60 seconds. That means it's 60 seconds at a maximum, but of course the user can stop it whenever they want. And I'm actually grabbing the name of the video from the form. I'll show the app in a second. I'm grabbing it from the form, and I'm just using the field in the form where the title was set to set the name of the video. Probably I should also do some kind of check in here of, is this a valid file name that can be used? The user might put a space in there, and that could cause problems. But it's demo code, right? So here's the video save event. The only, which you can install, I do install a save event. I don't do anything in there. The only thing that you get from that save event is, did it work or did it not work? We could potentially do other things like capture duration, perhaps, or file size, but today that's what you can capture. This is in general follows the pattern of most of the JavaScript APIs, where there's a retrieval event, and then you can grab properties off of it. So I'll show it. And then I'll show an example of that on the next slide. So, and then of course this is the payoff, right? We've set the parameters that we just call video capture start. It turns out in this example, we actually could do as little as just saying video capture start. So it's pretty darn easy. Of course, if I just said video capture start, one of the things I'm going to do is just bring up the questions box and see if there's any interesting questions. So please ask questions as they arise. Or feel free to interrupt me, Rob, if you see them. You could do this with as little as just calling video capture start. You'll get a duration of 5,000. You'll get a name of video capture. Let's make sure that that's, yeah, so I think I might have skipped the, let's see, yeah, you'll get a name of video capture. That's the default that we show here. If you just call it with no parameters, that'll be the name here, and you wouldn't get a callback event installed if we had just called start. So it's quite easy to use. I encourage you to give it a try and add it to your apps, hopefully as soon as we're done this webinar. And then if you want to do an on-stop event, again, you might not need to because it'll either time out or the user will stop it. But if you wanted to have your own UI elements for that, you could do it, again, an on-click, where you hook it to some kind of method that you write. Note that your method does not need to say on stop. It can be whatever you want to call it that you've installed here. The only key thing is it needs to be video capture.stop. Notice, by the way, that I'm showing JavaScript here. And the reason why is I want to just emphasize how much row elements is just as much about JavaScript as it is for Ruby. But for the Ruby programmers there, this is all well documented in the video capture sample, and the Ruby is very similar, except that sort of following Ruby idioms, it's capital V video capture, and then there's no parentheses, right? In Ruby, you want to do it in poetry mode, so to speak, without parentheses wherever possible. Okay, so then there's the video capture retrieval event, and if you want to use the JSON object transfer result, then do something interesting with it. I guess I could say, if this worked, pop up an alert that says it worked, and if it didn't, don't do it. I could be logging out whatever I want to do. In this case, in my sample app, it's empty, but that's what I would use. Over time, we'll be adding more interesting properties here. We definitely want your feedback on things, to be honest, we want to see if people are using it before we expand it out much further. So let me shift to my trusty RHOStudio IDE. and let's show some examples, of how this is put together. I'm not going to run it now because I want to talk about raw sensors, but here's my code here for, let's just drag this over and make it more visible. Here's my code here for the video title that I'm going to use, and then here's my link, a data ajax equals false, on click is start, and that's going to call the video capture event, and I'm sorry, that's going to call on start. On start is here. I throw up the alert, which I don't have to do. Set the duration, which I don't have to do. I set the name of the file. Then I call start. And I did not provide an on stop. I do provide the save video event that I could do some interesting things. I'm not actually doing anything interesting with it right now. So now let's move from there to talking about raw sensors. So it'd be cool to make this interactive. So before I go any further, Rob or any attendees, are there any questions before I move on to talk about raw sensors, about the video capture APIs?
So any questions, guys, on the video capture? I know, Adam, I did get a couple of questions from people who registered and were unable to attend on video capture.
Okay.
They were asking about the ability to set the type of a video file, whether it's an MP4 or, all the different flavors that we have. What is
MP4.
what sort of? It's
MP4.
always MP4. Okay.
We have some requests in the queue for other formats. Please forward your requests. So we want to know what you want. I'm sorry. Audio is yeah. So it is MP4. We've gotten some requests on audio capture for Wave. We'll consider those requests. Definitely want to know not just what other formats you have, but sort of why, right? Because we do want to create a format that works on all devices. The right ones run any. So especially if you're going to do any post-processing, we've tended to try to avoid things that are more targeted at individual platforms. But if you have a use case where you really need something that's tied to a single platform, let us know.
Okay, and then one other question I got before this webinar was about the UI that's displayed when the video is being captured. Any ability to control what that looks like or its behavior?
Not today. It's an interesting, with the exception that you can sort of control how you stop and start, right, with those callbacks. But in terms of sizing it and other things, that's not something that we have there today. And so, in fact, let's go ahead and go to your example here. The parameters that we have, you see, are fairly limited. It's the ones that I listed: duration, destination, username, password. But again, we want to listen to you. We're delivering features in a pretty agile way. Quarterly releases. So, and we're also providing betas on an interim basis. The first 2.0 and 2.1, we did public betas. 2.2, we did more individual betas for customers that needed. Well, we were going back to public betas. In a way, we did a public beta because we did an earlier release candidate. So let us know what you need. We'll get it in the queue, and then we'll deliver it in appropriate betas if that's something that people need urgently. We definitely want to see people use video capture, so let us know what other features you need. And I think the screen sizing is a good one. It fits in within what we did with signature capture, where we initially had just a full screen, and then we created inline signature capture.
Okay, one other question that just came in from the audience, Adam, has to do with Rhomobile supporting video capture. I think you mentioned before that we need to do this on a real device. We do not have any
device capabilities in Rhomobile today. That's an area that we are going to be expanding in the future. We will probably focus more on the capabilities that are unique to Motorola because we don't really want to be in the sort of simulate the device capability details of every other device vendor. If that makes sense. So there's things that only Motorola supplies, so we will focus our simulator efforts on the Motorola specific capabilities, but that particular one would qualify.
Okay, very good.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to talk about raw sensors. So this is very exciting. This is Motorola is introducing devices in the future with all kinds of sensors, not just accelerometer and magnetometer, but temperature, ambient light, pressure, gravity, humidity. I would prefer not to sort of steal other products' thunder by talk about all the specific devices and what they're offering. But Rob, I think this is actually a great opportunity for you to bring in other product managers within Motorola to talk about some of the roadmap of the exciting capabilities that are coming out. I would certainly be interested in seeing that put out to the Rhomobile community to get people excited about those. But of course, there's a couple of these that apply to many other devices, and that's accelerometer and magnetometer. So you'll see it's called out in the matrix separately in Rob's matrix here. So we have raw sensors, right? But you'll see that Rob has helpfully included links from things like magnetometer to the raw sensors API. So don't be confused by that. It's all the raw sensors API, but we try to make it easy for people that are looking for accelerometer and magnetometer. And again, some of the samples are not as much tied into the sort of the way that we do things. Like this sample here is not going to work inside our scaffolding. So hence I thought it was valuable to try to put together a sample that is compatible. So let's talk a little bit more about the raw sensor, the way that you do things. Very, very simple. You use get sensor data to do a synchronous call and just get the data back. That's not really a great way of doing things. We're all about callbacks, right? Callbacks are reliable. They create a more performant app. You can make the screen responsive, so please do the callback. So the callback is what you do is you say raw sensors.sensor event and you give it your callback function. And then, of course, to set the parameters, you'll call whatever individual property it is. So to set a parameter on accelerometer, you call that. You'll call raw sensors.magnetometer, etc. So here's some of the parameters. This isn't even all of them. There's just so many here. Accelerometer, and you'll set it to enabled or disabled. It's by default disabled. So accelerometer, device orientation, tilt angle, motion, e-compass, magnetometer, gyroscope, ambient light, all of these things, all of these sensors can be enabled or disabled. So here's an example of in setting the parameter and then installing the callback. So we're going to say orientation is enabled, and we're going to install the callback for on sensor, which of course means that we have to do an on sensor click. So here's our function on sensor. We're going to create some output in HTML. Make sure to use valid HTML in here. Don't just slap strings in there. I guess you could. You just need to be careful that it's it's visible. So you want to do things like bolded text. So I'm building up the output string here, and I'm just showing the X, Y, and Z orientation of the device. And then I just send it to my output div, which initially has some contents. This is more for you to read. You can see in the actual app, you may not want to have an initial value there, like you may want to just leave that blank till you put something in. So let's go ahead and show this in the app. And here is my here's my raw sensors orientation enabled. Here is my on sensor command, just what you saw there. And then I'm calling this from this a data Ajax is false on click, right, instead of doing a button, which is not going to work so well in my jQuery mobile scaffolding. And then we're getting the result back here. And by the way, just the wider context of this app, I'm doing this in my video edit ERB. What I'm doing is essentially like writing a video manager for us to record videos, save them, and then basically have a list of videos that we could then annotate with the magnetometer orientation. So maybe you're going around and taking videos as a tourist and you want to show that, hey, my location is in the Sistine Chapel, but now I know that I'm pointing at the north wall. Perhaps a little artificial, but it maybe gives an idea of some of the powerful capabilities that you have with this. So now what I'm going to do is, this is my app here. I mean, really all the interesting stuff is here. The rest of it is just scaffolded stuff. So all I do from the top level is I link to my video manager scaffolding, and then from here I have the basic scaffolding that lists all the videos, and then I only enable this on editing, because the idea is that I'm annotating my video. That's the point where I would want to capture magnetometer. If I was to complete this, maybe I'll go ahead and do so, I'd probably want to grab geolocation data so that I could tag the videos with not just magnetometer data of direction and orientation, but also geolocation. Part of the purpose is I think this makes it very understandable, because this is quite brief. So let's go ahead and do a run, and let's say run configurations. I'm going to run on a device. If you run this on a simulator or row simulator, it's not going to do anything interesting. So let's show, how am I going to show this? Great, I should have turned off my link. By the way, I think I got a question. 2.2 is released. If you go to Motorola Launchpad, it is in fact released. So, so I'm going to go ahead and do a run. And I'm not going to make you all wait for the build. I actually did a run in the last window, and you'll see that I actually have this running on my device. My device actually just went to sleep, but here is my device. And you can see that as I change this, those numbers are changing. And that's because I turned the video capture on, or the magnetometer on, by clicking this. I can also click on video capture. I have to do that on the device. Yeah, I'm telling myself capturing video. And now I've got the video capture capability. So I can take the video as long as I want. I'm here in our lovely UK offices here. And I'll save it. And now I'm done. And now let's just make sure, let's see. So I'm using this thing called Android Projector, and it looks like that might have shut it down. I will restart Android Projector. And I'll click OK on the app, and then you'll see the app with the I'm going to replug that in so that it can do the deploy. So here this is running again. I can save this. Let me just actually restart the video capture so you can see it. So there's my video capture running. It's going to be a little slow. And by the way, this is a utility that's in the Android SDK called video. Well, let's see, is it even showing the video? I can see it on my device. Okay. I think it's taking a while to get all these pixels over. If you're actually running on a device, this will run. I'm looking at my device, and it actually does show up. And then I'm going to stop this. It looks like it gets everything but the, oh, okay, so now there it shows up. It's just the delay. And I'll say OK, and now I'm back to my UI. So just in case some of you are curious, I know there's some people out there that use ET1 a lot for demos. There are other utilities. This utility, Android Projector, is quite nice because you can use it for ET1. You don't have to get anything off an app store or anything, and it runs on pretty much any device. Do make sure that you point it to your Android, point your libdir variable in your script to your Android tools lib directory. If you don't, you'll get an error that it says a jar is missing. And I think as shipped, that happens to most people. Okay, so back to the PowerPoint presentation. Before I go, I have a little bit to talk about where we're heading in the future. But before I move off of raw sensors, any questions about raw sensors?
So I don't see any questions about raw sensors. Can you just flip? I'm sorry, Adam. Flip back to the chart that showed the list of parameters. I think one of that. Yeah. So where was it?
These are
yeah,
some parameters.
right.
It's not even all of them, right? Because the parameters are for all the different devices. This is all. The complete list is here, but it's quite long.
Yeah, it's quite long, so there's quite a number of sensors. One of them I want to point out, because this question came in before, was the minimum interval. So this is how frequently we will check for, I guess, changes, right? So just make sure you're, depending on how many sensors you're trying to monitor, of course, if you really make that a small value, you just need to be aware of this and how it affects the performance of your application. So take advantage of the asynchronous aspects, but also make sure that you're looking at the minimum interval and how many sensors you're trying to monitor.
But be aware that minimum, I believe that's more relevant for other sensors. As you can see, this is changing pretty much real time. There's not a 1 second delay.
Yeah.
It's almost real time. Okay, so if there's no more questions about raw sensors, I want to talk a little bit about where we're heading with 4.0. And we'll save for another briefing. Maybe we'll come back in a month or two and talk about the full scope. But what I want to emphasize is the seriousness that we take that JavaScript is a first-class language like Ruby. We love Ruby, but JavaScript has its uses. It has people that are more comfortable in it. You've seen it. We've done lots and lots of stuff in JavaScript. We're going to make sure that you can do everything in JavaScript. That includes Model View Controller. That includes ORM. That includes app generators. May not be the same as what we do there, or maybe not to the same extent, but we will give you some ability to easily create apps. And the other key thing is fill in. If you saw Rob's matrix, the idea is no empty square. So we wanted to get people video capture as soon as possible. So we did it for Android and Windows Mobile, but we absolutely are going to support other OSs there. With the same API. So that's the commitment. And so a lot of the themes of 4.0 is JavaScript, 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 and then really making that matrix fully solid. So everything is supported on every OS. So for example, NFC RFID, by the way, is not in 2.2. You'll see that it's not there. We needed to wait for an update from the RFID team. So it's going to make it in Service Pack 1, which we are going to ship this month, 2.2 Service Pack 1. So I'm glad that triggered discussing that. But we aren't just, over time, we're going to merge the NFC IDs, NFC APIs, which we already have, and RFID, and then support it everywhere it applies. So not just Android and Motorola devices, but other operating systems that have that. The other thing that we're going to do, you'll see that there's starting to get a little bit of API overlap. So for example, you have the barcode APIs and the scanner APIs. The scanner APIs are very powerful and very detailed. There's nothing that's really a bug there. And the barcode APIs have less fine-tuned control. We still don't want to see that long term. We want to see one API with a lot of really intelligent default behavior, but it still gives you the fine-grained control. So we will be working in 4.0. In fact, if you follow the semantic versioning philosophy, it says only introducing breaking changes in major releases. We have no intentions of breaking anybody's app, but the fact that we're deprecating certain APIs as we overlap could be considered that we're moving your cheese, so to speak. So what we are doing is saying in 4.0, we will not provide two APIs that do the same thing. There will be a preferred API and a deprecated API. So we're very excited about 4.0. That's a lot of the reason I'm in the UK now, is to really get that plan nailed down. And but I think what you've seen in 2.2 with the aggressive new JavaScript support is a good indicator of the flavor of where we're going. So with that, any questions about what I've done so far? I am going to post this on github.com/Rhomobile. It will be called RE22 Features. and so you will be able to download it. It's there's obviously a lot of great samples that are in the doc. This may be valuable if you are, it may save you a little bit of a shortcut if you're intending to embed any of these capabilities into a scaffolded app that uses jQuery Mobile.
All right, so why don't we, thanks, Adam. Why don't we open it up to questions? There are a couple in the queue, and while we do that, let me just launch a question for you. And as we highlighted our raw sensor capability in this release, like to get an idea from the developers on the call on what particular sensors do you think you would be including in your application, right? So take a look at those. Click the ones that you feel would probably most apply. That would be much appreciated. Adam, one thing I just wanted to mention as you talk about samples, in the installation folder, so after you install Motorola Rhomobile Suite, inside of that folder there's a sample folder, okay? And you'll see new in this release, the JavaScript API sample code, so you can actually crack that open. We also include the traditional road system API samples on there. So be sure to check that out. That is the latest and greatest kind of sample code that's included with the product and the release.
I'm glad you brought that up, Rob, and that's important because traditionally, as most of you know, if you've used roads and row elements in the past, the samples were in system API samples on github.com/Rhomobile. They're still there. But they're also available offline. The JS API samples is not on github.com/Rhomobile. However, those of you that said why, it's not clear that that's really necessary. Unless we get a lot of requests for it, we think it's probably fine. You can just use it offline in that folder. However, in 4.0, we are going to have the one true kitchen sink sample that has all APIs, and you will not have to sort of say, and that will be posted both offline and locally, so that will alleviate any issue with, hey, what API am I calling in what way, and therefore which sample do I need?
Great. Yeah. So two questions that were answered that we didn't answer. One of them I think you did cover actually was RFID and our plans for supporting that. So it looks like we have a service pack coming up that will officially support RFID. The other question came from Michael, having to do with continued support for Android devices in the future. And this is really not a question for you, Adam, I guess. And I think you brought up a good idea that I need to bring somebody from the main product team into the fold here and have them kind of present the roadmap so we can see what products we should be developing.
Device
for.
team.
I think, yeah, I'm sorry, the device.
There's nothing not main about Rhomobile Suite, right? But yes, I think it would be valuable to bring individual device product managers in. Yes. Yeah,
device team, thanks. But just generally speaking, I think our plan is that we're supporting any new products that we develop, or having some baseline support for row elements inside of new products that we introduce.
Correct. There will never be a Motorola Solutions EMC device that does not have at its release support by row elements. We are completely committed to that. If you look at some devices like ET1, it's the only way. There is no app SDK besides row elements to do it. So it's pretty critical that we do support all of these new Motorola Solutions devices.
Okay, great. So any last-minute questions? Before we end the conference, you can see the results of the poll. Thanks for participating, and it's glad to see that it looks like our work is will be well suited in your applications, taking advantage of these new features. All right, so while we're waiting for last-minute questions, just a reminder: be sure next week to tune in as we discuss Row Connect Push and demo that feature. And we'll just give another second here. Adam, do you have any last closing words you'd like to share with the team?
No, just feel free to reach out to me, adam.blum@motorolasolutions.com, and feel free to send your feedback to either Rob or me about capabilities that you're going to use in this release, and especially refinements to them, things that you'd like to see expanded in these APIs, but we'd love to hear your feedback in general.
Okay, I guess that concludes the conference. Thanks, Adam, for presenting today, and thanks, everybody, for joining and participating. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Rob. Bye.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.